Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. Today we find ourselves in Blighttown, where the first update is that I fixed the brightness issue. I'm still kind of tweaking the luminance, but long story short, I basically had overlooked the tone mapping settings, and I was still using tone mapping settings from Prepare to Die, which basically the max and min luminance are the one thing you can't really transfer from Prepare to Die to DSR. They function very differently. I will say this has always been exceptionally dark in here. Even with all my different changes and difference in luminance, I need to relook at this little interior portion because it's always been bafflingly dark for no particular reason. Even if I change like the player lantern, but I'll look into that. But the rest of Blighttown, I'm still tweaking it, but my goal was to have it be kind of like, what it was in the base game, so visible but still dark. But the big change, I buried the lead, although actually now that I'm thinking about it, my thumbnail will actually tell you exactly what the surprise is, so this is all useless. I have put the entirety of Firelink Shrine viewable from Blighttown. Although I'm now realizing my depth of field changes that I just did last night might make that a little bit less noticeable, but then again, the way that they were in the base game is that basically there really wasn't much depth of field at all used in Blighttown, and like you could see all the way up there to Firelink Shrine like 100%. It was kind of weird, if I'm honest, because it just looked like it was missing depth of field. Like it had a depth of field setting, but it was set to be pushed out so far that it just basically wasn't used at all. It's really strange. So I'm still tweaking that, so that's not final or anything. What you're seeing here, of course, is not live on Nexus or anywhere. This is me still sort of tweaking. I did do one other thing, and if you look up at the sky here, it's pretty bright. It still uses the correct light ID and everything that the sky of Blighttown normally had. You'll now see moving clouds. The difference is that before, Blighttown did have clouds, but they weren't moving. They were just static. So basically I stole the skybox from Firelink Shrine, which was a stolen skybox from Undead Burg, and because they all are in very close proximity to each other, they're right next to each other, so for me that made sense to actually basically port over the skybox for it, which now I'm noticing a visual oddity. There's still bugs I gotta fix with. Like the darkness of that one object in the distance. Does it stay like that? Or does it just look weird? Let's run over there real quick, because I see it's like totally dark. Is it? Oh, is that a fucking shadow or something? Okay. But yeah, I really like the luminance currently, and I like that the swamp is back. I'm happy with that change. The water looked very cool, obviously. Oh, I need to put the swamp back in my fake version of Blighttown viewable from Firelink. I think I forgot to do that. Oh, is that like... Oh, that must be a fucking shadow. Yeah, I'll mess around with the shadow density settings. But yeah, you can see the actual light rays that are in Firelink Shrine, and the entire graveyard is there. I'll tweak the depth of field to make it slightly more noticeable, but still have a depth of field effect. Let's run all the way over here. Because I added the aqueduct that you take to go into Undead Burg. They had a facsimile of it, but now that there's the real one there, I wonder if we can see it. Because you can see that's the actual structure where the bonfire is in Firelink. And they're all in the correct location, of course. Yeah, I don't think you can really see the aqueduct from here, so that may have been an unneeded change, but, minor difference. But yeah, there's some other changes I've made, like upscaling boss textures. I'll do a separate video for that. I'm upscaling them to 4K, because a lot of them are 2K by default. And they're still kind of like the way that they're stretched around the character, and so I am upgrading that. I really like how the depth of field looks down here. I've been tweaking it to different values to, because I want there to be sort of a slightly disorienting effect. Because that's how I felt the first time I was in Blighttown. I felt a bit overwhelmed. But what I like about the lighting settings and the dynamic shadows I have currently is that it really accentuates the brightness that you see from the sky and above on like this rock wall, and you really feel the scale of this area, but then dark on the bottom, right? But then you still see the shadows coming off those little, whatever the fuck you call those, leading up to Quailag's domain, right? I don't know, I just think it looks really cool, and I think the depth of field is sort of essential to that look. I can still tweak it down a little bit, the multiplier, to make it just a little bit more clear. But yeah, I think the moving clouds, I really like the moving clouds. And so here's my reasoning behind it. Because, yeah, I don't have any humanity, so I'll likely just die at some point. But the sky, you know, I'm aware that I don't want to take away personality from an individual area, and so the skybox is a very important part of that, right? But this is a case where the original skybox was just static clouds. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't think that there'd be a lore reason behind that, right? And for me, specifically because my mod, you're able to see the real Blighttown from Firelink now, I think it only made sense that now that you can see Firelink from Blighttown as well, that it would share that similar skybox that I put in Firelink. And once again, I think people could, you know, on paper go, wait, you replace the skybox in Firelink, isn't that going to take away some personality? But in this case, the Undead Berg skybox was just a souped up version of like the Firelink one. It just included more cloud cover and more distant like rendering of clouds, and it had like the sun rays, but you couldn't really see that when you're in Firelink. But it wasn't like such a categorical difference, if that makes sense. Like, I think that's the key thing is I won't change it if there's a certain personality to that skybox that would be ruined. And when you port the skybox, they are still given the lighting settings of the skybox that was there originally. So it still has the look and the feel of the old skybox I replaced. I think that's the key part. And I think on papers, people could say, oh, if you bring in a new skybox, isn't that going to bring all the colors and the lighting with it? Thankfully not. You have to change it to the lighting IDs and the fog IDs and the scatter IDs of the sky that it's replacing. And it has the same draw groups. And so I've done it in a way that it doesn't affect anything else and it doesn't change. But I think it makes the Blighttown sort of feel a little more cohesive with the distant map pieces that I'm adding. Let's see if we can go up the elevator here without dying, because there is one other change. And I did it to Valley of the Drakes. I was working on that because the settings were a little goofy for it. I kind of fucked up, but I fixed some of the more pressing issues in Valley of the Drakes. And, speaking of skyboxes, Valley of the Drakes was sort of the inspiration for changing the Blighttown skybox, because Valley of the Drakes is an interesting one where it has originally a blank skybox. It is literally, and I promise you I'm not simplifying this, it is a solid color if you were picking like from Microsoft Paint. It's literally teal, and that is it. There was no detail in that skybox. There was nothing. And I'm not entirely sure why. I'm sure there was a reason behind it. But anyway, so I added that same Undead Berg skybox because Valley of the Drakes you can see from Undead Berg, right? But it still looks Oh, no, no, no. I didn't take the Undead Berg skybox. I take that back. I'm remembering what I did. Because what I do, I sometimes forget, as you guys pretty well know by this point. No, I took the Painted World skybox and put it in Valley of the Drakes, which I'll let you guys judge if that worked or not. Oh, yeah, I still have to go back here and replace this texture. Because this is a texture that is hard-coded to look like dog shit. And you basically have to create a new texture, but it's technically the same as the other texture, but name it something else. Go into the Fiverr file for this model, tell it to use the other one that you made that's technically new from the game engine, but technically it's the same as the other texture, and that tricks it enough to view the high-quality one. Because what it's viewing here is just a shit-ass like downgrade, because the actual texture, I've already upscaled it and it looks great, but when you're in game it looks like dog shit. So that's just a DSR issue. It's a little strange, but no, I took the Painted World skybox for a specific reason, because it, I feel like, has a similar look and color palette to Valley of the Drakes, and I thought it would make a lot of sense, actually. And at least in my testing, yeah, it looks pretty good, but I'll let you guys judge that. So here's how this little hallway works, or looks, not works. Yeah, what's up, dog? I gotta upscale their textures too, because they don't look, there's a lot of character textures that do not look so hot. But so here's the important transition from Blighttown to Valley of the Drakes, and I think it looks a lot better. It's still, there's gonna be a transition, but I think it actually looks pretty good. Yeah, like it's a pretty natural transition, I think. It's not too crazy. It doesn't like flashbang you or anything. Okay, so here's Valley of the Drakes. Here's what it looks like. And we still have the, this is one of the artistic changes that I still have. I haven't really been in Valley of the Drakes for a while, but I still have the water that I added. And then we have the fog sort of resting over that water. I still really like it, but I could see maybe some not liking it, but I love the dynamism that is added by the fog sort of slowly moving there. So now this big guy, I did take the texture for him from the Prepare to Die edition, and then I upscaled it to 4K because he's a pretty big dude. So a 2K texture on paper sounds good, but when you stretch it on a giant mesh like this, or giant-ish, it's not going to look as good. And the Prepare to Die texture had a lot more color to it. Like the purple here pops out a lot more in the Prepare to Die texture. So I ported that and upscaled it. Also, you may notice that this rock texture for the entire texture used for the rock walls or cliffs, I upscaled that to 4K. And once again, that's a case where the 2K texture being stretched on this gigantic, and it's sort of tiled to a certain degree, but even then, it appears not as high resolution as it would sound, but now I think it looks fucking awesome. I think it really stands out and has a lot of detail. And the normal map, I think, looks really good. And then the reflection in the water down here, I think, is really nice with the bridge. And I'm really happy with Valley of the Drakes. So if you look in the sky, it's pretty subtle. You have a similar color palette, well, the exact same color palette as the sky that was there before. But before, it was literally just a blank color. Like there was just nothing. I'm not sure if that was their emulation of wherever you're at, that's how bright it would be, and therefore you couldn't see the sky. I don't know, but I have the same settings for it. Well, I've tweaked technically to make it a little bit darker. I still need to work on that to make sure it matches, because it varies a little bit with the skybox, admittedly, with the textures, how bright they are. I do need to look at that, because I did have to copy over the textures into the texture file for M16 being New Londo / Valley of the Drakes. And I need to look at that texture, because I might darken it to the same degree that the color was, or the texture for the original skybox, which was literally just a flat color. It was no gradient. It was literally just a flat teal color. I need to look at the brightness of that, and if I can match that, I think that will make it align with the settings easier. Or I just go through param changes, and I just go through that way with the diff settings, and I can basically toggle it that way. I might just do that. There's always like 5,000 ways to do something in Dark Souls 1 modding. But yeah, if you look at the sky, now you have subtly moving clouds. And I don't think it's like overly noticeable, which is the key. I don't think it's going to take away from anything. I do think the depth of field might be a little bit strong in Valley of the Drakes. I thought I had edited that, but I will double check because I think it might be just a tad too strong. So I will tweak that. I also upscaled the textures of the drakes, and I think it looks pretty snazzy, although you're in my way. I need to get through here. Thank you. I ported them from the Prepare to Die edition as well, and now they're like 2K resolution, so they look pretty good. The other thing I fixed is there was a pretty much a known issue that was, and I think this was kind of in the base game, if I remember correctly. So basically, there was an overlapping portion of this mesh here, and this is a difficult spot because basically the inside of there is New Londo, right? And it uses completely different lighting IDs naturally because it's very dark in there, and so they all use the lighting IDs of like 3 for fog, light, and scatter. Now the problem you have is that obviously it's a shared map, that the way that if it's really dark in there, it's going to be a juxtaposition of the lighting ID that is out here, and you can tell it's very strongly blue, but the lighting IDs of 3 and the fog IDs used in there are not blue in the same way, and so that's why there's a very harsh cutoff. So there was this overlap, this lip here that was like flickering in and out, and I realized what that was. That was actually an overlap of 2 meshes. It was the inside mesh of the cave wall from the inside of New Londo, and it was overlapping into the mesh of the outside cliff here, and so I had to go into Blender and I basically cut that off, and so at least now it looks better. That's kind of my goal, is to at least make it not super noticeable or bad looking. But yeah, so small updates to certain things. And then, you know, this, of course, is a change I made a long time ago, and I believe I've talked about it in videos, but yeah, I updated the distant meshes that are used for Valley of the Drakes as well, so you get, you know, the Hellkite Bridge here, and then when you're all the way on the other side, when you look up, you can see Firelink Shrine. I think the fog actually looks really good, because it's actually the New Londo fog that's being used. Can I punch you? Oh wow, that actually let me go through. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, you can see from here, that is the aqueduct, and then there's the tree. I still need to tweak the depth of field, I think. I think it's a bit strong, but I think this area had stronger depth of field by default. But I do need to check that. And then at the top, as you're going towards the, you know, that little door that goes in there with towards New Londo, and then you can go up the tower or the elevator or whatever. But this is where I added the real Firelink Shrine on top, because before it didn't have that. Yeah, you can actually see it here, although the elevator chains, it's kind of an awkward thing. You can see the elevator chains, and from what I remember months ago, I ended up looking into that. I was like, were those always visible? And from what I remember, yeah, that was the default draw groups, and like that. Apparently, the chains were always visible. I don't know. I'll have to double check that, I guess, because I'm like, wait. I will say the cliff here has some UV mapping issues, because it looks like they're stretching the cliff right here. So I'll have to look at that as well. But yeah, you can see the actual Firelink Shrine up top there. So let's log out and actually go to a nice comparison that I'm doing here, because I wanted to show for Blighttown, on the right here here's what it used to look like. So here's, you know, obviously you're down in Blighttown, and the view, this was their distant Firelink Shrine that they used, which I think actually from a distance looks perfectly fine, right? Now, that's actually the funny thing, is this here is actually from the earlier version of Firelink Shrine, where they had a pathway that went across here into a door, and then it went towards Capra Demon. And it's actually kind of funny that they use this old mesh, and I think they may have forgotten to go back and update this to not have this, because of course our current Firelink, that was a shortcut that was never put in the game, but you actually can see the evidence of it in all the map pieces. And you can see where they basically sewed up the map pieces to close that, but there's evidence of all of that. And there's even a mod that restores that, which is really cool. But that's one of the cool things of, I guess, I don't know, that's really cool that they ended up keeping that, or just not remembering that it was there. And this distant part looks a little strange as a facsimile. It doesn't have the aqueduct at all. So if you go on the left here, or if you look on the left, here is what I've added, which is legit the actual Firelink Shrine meshes. And then I added the aqueduct just in case. Because I wasn't sure exactly from every angle what you could see and what you couldn't see. But yeah, you even have, all the buildings. I even added the trees and the tombstones, because like they're all low poly, so like from a rendering standpoint, it's not going to be crazy. And then I really wanted to add the actual, because the tree that they have is actually pretty decent. It's a pretty good tree. But is it as good? No, it's not, because I think you'll see there's actually no like trunk to it. It's literally just like the leaves, and they did like flat branches. And so now you get the actual tree trunks that are sticking out of the world. And then I also, while I was at it, I added the upstairs here, if you will. And so it's the distant Firelink, or no, distant Undead Burg, which is not the real Undead Burg, but I don't think you can see any of this from from Blighttown anyway. I was just doing it because it encompassed this whole section. So I ended up pulling in the fake one that Firelink normally used, because it's actually a pretty good fake of Undead Burg. And so it's really just meant to be convincing enough, which I went overboard on that, but I think the extra detail is actually quite nice. Now, I did have to edit this mesh here. This is one I brought in from Firelink, of course, as well, because it's the, or no, I didn't have to edit the graveyard. I ended up having to edit, I think it was 001. It was the big mesh that actually handles the wall here, or the big cliff. And it basically cut into this mesh down here, and it like cut into the doorway of Quailag's domain. So I ended up having to go into Blender, and I did edit that, and now you get basically a cutoff. The only thing I'm looking at is there is a sort of awkward transition between this rock wall and then what it looks like up here. So what I think I'm going to do, now that I have these map pieces in the folder for Blighttown, I can edit them on their own, and they don't affect the real Firelink, right? I believe the easy fix here would be for this rock wall and this graveyard portion, I can basically just give it this texture that's used down here for Blighttown, and then it should match up 1-to-1, and then easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's okay that it's not the same as what it looks like in Firelink, because there's still a huge juxtaposition between these two textures, and in game I'm sure you guys saw that like it's pretty noticeable. So I'll just give it this texture, and that's a similar thing they do from, now in my mod it slightly changes that, but from Firelink to Undead Burg they end up changing the cliff texture to a green texture versus the standard one that you notice like right here. It's more reddish, and it ends up just sort of transitioning over to that greenish one that you then see in Darkroot. And so just kind of a difference there that they've kind of always done. But yeah, I should just be able to reuse this texture and then apply it to this mesh, and I think it should work just fine. So Anyway, that's enough rambling from me. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a Patreon for ad-free versions, cool beans. I'll have a link in the pinned comment. I've been kind of doing that lately. And yeah, really appreciate all the love and support. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video.